So, Claire, what are some of the things that make medical detox important?
I think now that we have finally accepted that dependence is a medical condition, is a physiological condition, I see no reason why doctors should not be the ones treating it. Also, because we have also understood that suffering does not equate, recovery or sobriety by no means. So before, people used to say, if they don't suffer, they will not know the value of being sober. But actually, we see that more people do not get sober because of the suffering than the later.
Yeah, I think that there's some hanging on sort of moralistic thinking there, right? To where if you're abusing substances, you're naughty if you're using drugs, right? So you ought to be punished. I feel like that hung on for a long time. It's like, yeah, there's that kind of a draconian attitude that sometimes went into that.
I think it changed a bit once we had the issue with the prescription pain opioids. But what I don't understand is why it happened when there was physical pain involved, and why medically assisted detox was not an option when there is emotional pain involved.
Do you think that was a while going where medical detox was available but not respected or appreciated yet? I mean, what was the length of time there that before people started to catch on that, this exists and is a good thing, and not just good but necessary?
Listen, I think it's still the majority of people are against it. The majority of people still believe to allow somebody to withdraw and teach them a lesson, make them get up and tag themselves in the forehead as an addict. So I think the old values, judging people and making them pretty much pay the price, is still used in a lot of different treatment programs, sadly enough.
You're really against labeling, right? That's one thing I know about you.
I am. Not just in the addiction field, but in any field whatsoever. I mean, where you are right now, it has nothing to do of who you are. This is just a moment of your life. You can stay in it and become that, or you can change it. But I can't judge you by the worst time of your life. That's unfair. That's actually removing hope from people.
And addiction amplifies that too, because the things going really bad, then you take things that impair judgment and cause and effect understanding and put people into a crisis mode all the time. Then our worst is going to really be our worst when we're in that place.
Correct. And that brings us back to maintenance drugs that keep people in that state of not being able to make clear decisions, right? Not right, not wrong, but clear decisions.
It's not just medical or non-medical. There's the appropriate use and the appropriate application of medical things. There's some of the drugs that treat the dependence and the withdrawal symptoms. And I know we've talked a lot about how some of those are better used short-term, and then you have some more health management strategies that seem to go better long-term. But then some people go on a replacement drug for long-term, and I know that that's not something that is generally something you'd endorse.
Correct. Generally correct. Nothing is 100%. Everybody, have a different history and definitely have different needs. But generally, yes. I think, people should have the rights to be free from anything that holds them hostage of a situation.
Even for so many people, the original problem originates with a prescription. You get a lot of people who've never really been substance users or abusers that then get a prescription that gets out of hand. Yeah, I've never really asked you that. Do you have feelings about the general use of opiates?
I think opiates, like everything else in the medical field, is we learn more and more. I think they are great drugs for, immediate relief of pain, but they are They are not really supposed to be long-term drugs because consequences of long-term opiates, including for pain, are very negative and very risky for the person. So it affects every organ. So I think for short term, it works wonderfully. But, if the patient has a long life to live, if the patient have responsibilities, if the patient will to still have, pleasure, it's not a long-term drug. It shouldn't be. It's living with some kind of discomfort. Listen, we all have discomforts. I mean, if I sit here right now and think about, what hurts me, I can give you 10 different things. So it's true. The older we get, the more discomfort we have. Is how much we concentrate on that. I'm not undermining the people that have, acute, intense pain. Some people really, really have, severe pain. Although opioids are found, again, in most cases, not to help that long term as well because it causes hyperalgesia.
Well, and finding different ways to manage it, like you say, a long-term use of that. Sometimes they have the opiate-induced analgesia, like you say, that actually will cause pain eventually or becomes, as you put it, the suffering will deter people from getting better a lot of times.
Correct.
And people will avoid stopping their usage, and in many cases aren't actually chasing a high and haven't been chasing a high for a long time. They're just trying to avoid the pain that's going to come. And I think sometimes when people look at that and they say, oh, well, they're just trying to avoid, the consequences of their actions. They're just trying to avoid. I don't think people quite understand that we're not talking about just kind of, ouch, I'm kind of uncomfortable. I have semi-flu-like symptoms. Now, it's much more serious than that.
Oh, yeah, and it's not just a withdrawal. So you have somebody, suffering through a withdrawal. A lot of people say, withdrawal is no big deal. 5 days, 7 days, I can get through it. Not really. By the time, if you make it through those 5, 10 days of total misery, now you're depleted of so many nutrients, fluids. Your whole body is so dysregulated that it makes just living very, very difficult. You are hypersensitive. You also have no endorphins. So you feel everything very intensely, from light to discomfort to pain. Patients, feel like they're going to crawl out of their skin. And that can take weeks, with some opiates, even months. Not allowing them to get medical assistance through that period not just keeps them from looking into treatment, but also scared of failing treatment.
That's a whole emotional perspective for people to have, even way beyond the physical pain. Do you think that's, in some cases, even more important? Do you find the emotional fear of failure, of letting people down?
Oh, of course. By the time they call, they have been through 4, 5, 6 treatment centers, and in their words, they failed, where I think most of the time the treatment failed the patient. Mm-hmm. Of course, that sometimes the patient does fail. And when you say fail, what is fail? They just were not able to complete the path that was written for them.
An interesting concept when you bring that up. It immediately comes to my mind that trying to think of any other medical situation where we're like, well, you failed. I mean, I guess you might have doctors put you on some kind of diet or something. A cardiologist might tell you to lay off saturated fats and, oh, you're not doing the thing. But I don't know that most of them would sit there and be like, you failed. You just didn't have the wherewithal. I don't know if that's what they lead with.
And by the way, if they are, having problems with their knees because they're overweight and they, in parentheses, failed the diet, or any other physical issues that cause pain, they don't tell them deal with it because you ate too much when I told you not to. They still will give them the proper medical care for the symptoms they are having.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We don't...
The punishment is just, in this field, on the addiction field.
Yeah, we reserve that kind of rejection and cruelty for people who have an addiction problem, apparently.
Correct.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I feel reassured and confident after I have conversations with you when we record this show. It reminds me a little bit of like, oh yeah, right. Look, this is a hospital. It's a medical environment. And it helps. That even helps me when I talk to people that are having addiction problems to say, are you looking at that the right way? Are you characterizing this in your mind as a medical problem, or are you just labeling yourself as that failure that I just can't do life well, and so therefore that's who I'm destined to be?
Listen, some people, as you know, they don't have the tools needed to deal with the negative emotions, the tools to deal with stress for one reason or another, because of learned behavior or social environment, whatever it is. It leads them to substance abuse. Not allowing them to be free from the substance doesn't allow them to start the process of learning how to cope with these, behaviors, how to cope with these distressful moments. And it's not just opioids. I think it's alcohol, anything. If you're able to get them off the drug, if you're able to manage the physical craving, now you have somebody that is emotionally present to participate, whatever therapy or even treatment is needed.
You talk about the risk of not having detox available. The obvious risks are the ones we focus on going through the withdrawal process. In other words, the pain and the observable sickness and even the risk of death. But as we're talking now, it's got me thinking about other risks that are actually in some ways, I'm going to say they're at least as important. I mean, I guess, if you die, your life ends, but
overdose, of course.
Right. Yeah. There's a risk.
And what about the destruction of your life, your personal life?
Mm-hmm.
Your wife left you. Your kids have no respect for you. You lost your job. Consequences for a long time.
A risk to your quality of life is in some ways even worse than the risk to your actual physical existence.
Correct.
We have to be alive to have a quality of life, but it is not worth living if we don't have a life worth living.
You have nothing to come back to. I often get parents, they say, well, they told me to wait until they hit bottom. And I tell them, where is the bottom? Who decided where the bottom is? And once they get really down to the bottom, it's going to take a lot more work to come out of it. So why would you? There are certain things that you can't reverse. There are certain things in life that people go through that stays with them forever. And then you just might be giving them another reason to self-medicate.
Do you find a lot of people contact either family or parents of those that are struggling? Do they contact you guys to find out information about detox and not necessarily the one using themselves?
They do. Usually, when you're talking about, the 20, 28, yes, they do. The parents do, but one of the main questions for me is the patient willing to come. Are they looking for treatment? Are they looking for a way out? If not, it's difficult for everybody involved. So we will need to make sure, that the patient knows what are they going to receive and make sure that they are willing, not always ready, because, again, most of the patients are not ready to deal with life on life's terms. Mm-hmm. So that's, up to us to find the appropriate support.
Yeah, I always think ready is a really tricky term with any transition in life. You have to, I don't think any of us are ready for major transitions in life. I think the goal is to be ready enough to take the risk.
Absolutely right. Yeah. I was going to say, if you ask any of us right now, in January, are you ready for what's coming?
Yeah.
I guarantee you 99.9 and say, God, no, not a chance. I can't survive that.
Well, and I think of that applied to most things in life too, right? You say, are you ready to start a life with someone, to get married or have kids, or even to take a educational or career kind of step? A lot of times, sometimes, we might feel like we're definitely 100% ready, but I think a lot of those things we have to just say, no, you know what, I'm ready enough. I can go, and then I'll see what happens, and I'll deal with it and go with that. I think that is someone ready or desiring treatment is a much better metric than has their life fallen apart as much. You compare that idea of hitting bottom versus are you interested in getting treatment, which is much more of a medical outlook, the second question, than, hey, did your life get jacked up enough that you feel bad?
I think it can be compared to the diet story. Are you ready to start a diet?
Right.
So I think when you say, are you ready to get treatment, what does that mean? Am I ready to go 30, 60 days, 90 days, or am I ready to come off the drugs and then do whatever I need to do to live a healthy life? I think that's a better way to look at it, like at least a more actual way to look at it than am I ready to get treatment? Am I ready to live life as a productive human being?
Yeah, you tend to look at it as, what do you want to bring to the table of your life? What do you want to add to it instead of just taking away drugs, which is part of the problem. A lot of times people hear this throughout their life is like, just stop it. Stop doing that. Take away the drugs, take away the alcohol, and everything will be fine. It's like, well, probably not really, because there were reasons that all came up in the first place. I need to not only take that away,
Correct.
I need to add some happiness and some health and some skills and, all of those things. I kind of wonder when people come to contact you, they pick up the phone and call someone like Wiseman Method, and are they still gathering data as far as whether or not detox is something that they should do or whether or not it's good, or do you find that they've decided or are still deciding at that point what to do?
I would say most of the time they have decided. They're gathering information and what the detox is all about. They're gathering information of detoxification options, risks, and success.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people really that calls us, they're ready to put the dependence behind them. Most people, not all people.
Yeah.
There are some people that are just so scared to live life on life's terms that sometimes when they call, they are calling, sadly enough, to prove to somebody else that they cannot be without the medication. The good news is sometimes even those who come in order to prove, that they do need the medication to survive, find out that is not so bad without it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the hope, that even if they do relapse, that they know that week or 10 days they were with us, it didn't feel so bad. Amount of hope there where it was everything very dark before.
There's treatment packed into it. Well, one of the things that's really impressed me about the way y'all approach it is that there's treatment packed into it, that you look at it and say, well, we have a short amount of time with our patient. Instead of saying, oh, here's the one service you came in for, detox, there you go. Like some clinics actually do that. You kind of look at it like, oh, you're here. This is our time with the patient. We're going to try to make them healthier when we're done with them. I think that's very powerful.
It is. I think, physically feeling well and being able to clearly think helps you immensely emotionally as well. And sitting with somebody and discussing, their options, their future, even their dreams, and how they could achieve that, supporting them through that time, I think is extremely important. It's just feeling heard, feeling cared for. So everything we say, everything we call treatments, it creates a certain theory of what's right and what's wrong. There is no right, there is no wrong. There is human beings of different needs. And if you do have a physical issue, you should be treated by a physician. If your physical issue also caused, or we don't know who is the chicken and the egg, right?
Right.
Emotional issues, then you should have a doctor and a therapist.
Yeah. And
Now, if you do want, support by friends, family, or other people that have been in the same situation, that's great as well. But those are three different things all together.
yeah. And none of which are mutually exclusive from the others. I think if people look at it and say,
Of
what's
course.
the right way to go? Well, the right way to go is get as much treatment as you can access that you're willing to do and able to access, whatever's available to you. So
You would be amazed that, how many families put together in order to get, their family member treated in the hospital instead of, a room somewhere.
So you'll see people that'll do, even because stereotypically people would think of a program like Wiseman to be a really high cost, and so therefore exclusively people with a lot of means. But you're saying there's a lot of people that will push together funds and because of the value of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, but there is too much treatment. There's always too much of something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I've seen that too, where someone becomes a frequent flyer to the treatment culture almost a little bit too much, and that becomes their whole thing.
And no, of course, like let's make it an example. You have a young man, 25, 26 years old, did not have any issues. I mean, any major issues growing up, and went to play football in college, whatever, got hurt, started taking opioids. Life went upside down. He is a year away from getting his degree, had great prospects in life. Should he go to treatment, detox, then treatment, then sober living, then outpatient? Or should he get detox, get, emotional assistance and treatment to go back to a productive life and finish his school and become a productive member of society?
It's a good point. There's a reason where I've gravitated to working in outpatient therapy as most of my career, because I feel like when I worked in residential and inpatient facilities, they're really good programs, many of the ones I worked for, and they were necessary, but everybody has to do outpatient medical care at some level before, after, or instead of the more intensive, right? And so that's going to be there no matter what. And so, that when you talk about that, for me, if it was my son we're talking about, or if it was me, if it's at all possible to say, let me get some medical stabilization that doesn't tank all of those things you said, if it's possible.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Too much treatment is possible. Too little is often possible, but too much is also possible.
It's interesting.
So there shouldn't be a preset protocol. There should be a very good health evaluation of the person in front of you. And a detailed plan, attempt to give them the healthier and the happier quality of life possible, period, without any preset judgments or protocol. And that's I think is one of the biggest issue in the treatment world is, we'll tailor for you. You're not tailoring. If you're telling them you have to be here 60 days, it doesn't matter if your whole life is going to fall apart, and then you have to do this for 30 days, and then you have to go to a meeting with the other 100 people. That's not tailoring.
Well, for the people who've never really experienced working in a field like this or seeing it, how would you describe what it's like to be part of this with somebody? When somebody comes in and you're part of their treatment and you see them go through the detox, how does that affect you? What does it feel like to you?
It's, I think throughout the years it's changed. Throughout the years, when you get to know people and you see them succeeding or you see them failing, it becomes quite personal. What could we have done better? On the other hand, when they succeed and they're so hopeful and thankful and grateful, how can we make them feel all those things about themselves and make that victory theirs and not ours? Because truly we're just, a tool, but they are the ones doing the work. I guess it gives perspective of an idea of that we are not that powerful. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're just one person in somebody's life being there for them and helping them to get where they want to be, period.
The Wiseman Method podcast is a product of Wiseman Method Treatment Specialists, which you can follow on Twitter @opiates. To learn more about us, go to opiates.com or email us at info@opiates.com. Please consider going over and giving us a great review on Apple Podcasts or whatever program you use to listen to your shows. Please share this show with a friend if you're willing to help us to share the good word about treatment for dependence and to help people to make good decisions about their treatment. Our music is Medical by Clean Mind Sounds. The show is edited and produced by Pop Collar Productions, a company that specializes in helping healthcare professionals, nonprofits, and others to find creative solutions through podcasting. Tune in for our next episode when David Livingston and I will be talking about what constitutes therapy and what constitutes moving towards a healthy, happy life in recovery and treatment. It'll be really exciting to have you here, as it always is. Always ask questions, because when you have questions, you can find answers. And when you find answers, you find hope. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye for now.